This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granick-Allen. During my time lobbying at the United Nations 2 decades ago, I participated in a session hosted by an NGO on a subject or phrase I had never heard before: toxic masculinity. I immediately thought, to what does that refer or even mean? Well, that phrase seems to have permeated our culture in the past decade, and today we're going to discuss what it means, if there is a difference between men and women, what traits and characteristics predispose men or women to being better at certain tasks than the other, and should toxic masculinity be praised or condemned? Well, joining me now are Lynne Cohen, a journalist and non practicing lawyer in Ottawa, and Peter Shawn Taylor, senior features editor of C2C Journal, both authors in a three-part series on toxic masculinity. So that's some heavy introduction there. It sounds like we're going to have a lot of fun. But truly, maybe I'll start with you, Lynn. When did this
Sure.
concept first arise?
Um, you mean to write the article?
Well, we'll talk about that, but really the concept of toxic masculinity. Like, again, I was at a conference on, I guess, women's rights, and this came out
Mhm.
at a side session. I think it was called Deconstructing Toxic Masculinity. And it was quite interesting, and over 20 years ago. But in your experience as a journalist and non-practicing lawyer, when did you first encounter this phrase? When did this become a thing in society?
A toxic masculinity has been around, maybe 25 years that I've noticed it. Um, I guess for myself, it's something I always liked. I like toxic masculinity. I like the things that make men men. And part of it is just their being masculine. You'll notice though that our series was called tonic masculinity. And we turned the phrase around to make it palpable to, even people who just think automatically that toxic masculinity must be something terrible.
Definitely. It's an interesting phrase. Peter, you're a man.
Mm,
When you
yes.
first encountered the phrase toxic masculinity, how did you react? How did that make you feel?
Well, it seemed like a verbal trick to me. It takes everything that makes a man and turn it into some sort of disease. I mean, it shows up in uh, psychological texts and whatnot as a problem that has to be cured. And what do they mean by it? Well, they mean the normal things, as Lynn mentioned, that men are typically known for: competitiveness, aggressiveness. Um, uh, Provide
This
family, anything that is not feminine ends up being toxically male, and I think that's what one of Lynn's contributions in the two parts of the three-part series she wrote is to say, well, wait a minute, let's what is it that people mean by toxic masculinity, and is really a bad thing. And she latched onto the work of a psychologist in New York City, Miles Groth, who was promoting this idea of tonic masculinity, that the things we associate with men are actually benefits to society. Men tend to be builders. They tend to have a sense of self-sacrifice. They We can get into this later, but they do tend to dominate Nobel Prizes and explorers and whatnot. So there's this pushing frontiers is another aspect of masculinity. And this bad? I think society from the beginnings of mankind have benefited from masculine. Not to say that feminine attributes aren't also useful, but this recharacterization of masculine bad, feminine good, it does a disservice to everybody, I think.
So, Lynn, why is there a demonization of masculinity? Because we could just drop the toxic. It's really masculinity we're talking about here. Why is there a demonization of masculinity in our culture?
Oh, wow, that's a heavy question,
Well, you
the
only have
person
30
you
seconds before commercials.
I'm not gonna even take that long. The person to ask that question to is, my colleague and very good friend, Janice Fiamengo, a retired professor from Ottawa University. She writes on this topic exclusively.